Well, South Africans are voting in by-elections across the country. Our reporter, Natasha Piri, is standing by with the IEC Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Masego Sheburi, on the progress so far and how the elections are going. A very good afternoon to you, Natasha. All right, I suppose it's that time then for you to get that conversation underway.
To our viewers. Definitely, Flo. Thank you so much for having me once again. As promised, we promised you that 4 o'clock interview, but just an apology to our viewers. So we were supposed to speak to the Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Saima Mabolo, but now we are joined by the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Masego Sheburi. Thank you so much for joining us on the SABC, Mr. Sheburi. Quite different circumstances now that elections are held under COVID-19. On Monday, you had said that the IEC has got a backlog of by-elections to deal with, and today, the day has come. Today's D-Day. The IEC has labeled today as Super Wednesday, where 95, or I think I'm right, 95 wards are up for grabs across 55 municipalities. 40 political parties are contesting each other. You've got 444 candidates. How's everything going? Is everything going smoothly?
We're very happy that starting from yesterday, COVID-19 measures that we put in place at the voting stations and when we did home visits to obviate the spread of the disease have held very well. In spite of the rain, we were able to also extend the right of franchise to those persons who voted by special votes because they were unable to come to a voting station because of physical conditions. Today we opened all our stations in the morning on time, except in very isolated instances where we were troubled, and we're extending the right of franchise to 600,000 people who are registered in the 95 wards in the 55 municipalities.
Now, let's just focus on the special votes that took place yesterday. In terms of the numbers, 23,008 people were eligible for casting special votes. Did all those people actually vote? I'm speaking particularly on Monday when we asked you a question of people who had probably contracted coronavirus. The IEC had said that they are not exempt from voting. They won't lose their right to vote. Instead, IEC officials will actually go to the places of quarantine or home to actually make them vote. Were there such incidences?
Special vote, as you know, are by pre-application. So all those persons, 23,008, had applied for special vote before the cut-off period, and because we knew who they were, we were able to plan and send teams out into homes. In those instances, we had heightened PPEs for our staff. We planned as though we may confront or we may be confronted by people who may have been exposed or who are positive. We also planned it in such a way that when we encounter a voter, they must feel reasonably assured that we've taken all the precautionary measures. We have been able to reach those persons, and if there are those that were not reached, they could still go to a voting station today to vote. Special votes were in 2 categories. There were those who voted at their voting station because they would have been away today. The second category was persons who are unable, owing to a physical condition, to go to a voting station, those who would have visited at places of confinement and in their homes. We are relatively comfortable that we have reached everyone who has applied for a special vote. But as I said, if for whatever reason the person was not home or we could not reach them, those persons still have until we close stations today to go to a voting station to vote.
And I understand voting stations will be closing at 9 p.m. tonight. But in terms of an overall picture, what is the feedback that you've had from your officials so far? Are people actually complying with the new normal? Meaning, are they keeping their distance? Are they wearing their masks? Are they coming to voting stations with their own pens if they don't want to use, the commission's pens and so forth?
The measures that we put in place, you should observe, they are intuitive. In other words, they are the same as a person when they go to a mall. So it's not visiting any additional hardships on the part of the voter. So we are happy with the level of compliance by voters. They keep safe distances at the voting station. They've brought their masks, and in some instances there are voters that have heeded the call to to come with their own pens in the event they don't want to use the pens at the voting station. We've had an even, albeit satisfactory, rate of participation throughout the 95 wards. Obviously, in wards that are contested, you'll see heightened participation. In wards where there is less contestation, we are also happy that there's been a steady stream of persons in those instances.
Talking about a steady stream of people or voters going to voting stations, throughout the morning, my colleagues were spread out throughout various regions. You had in the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape some complaints of voters not, actually going to voting stations, or some just trickling in slowly with their numbers. What could be a contributing factor to that?
Generally, the rate of participation in by-elections is generally less than the rate of participation in general elections. But we are pleased that for the last two general election of municipal councils, we've seen an increase in the rate of participation. We are thankful for the role of the media that they've played in creating hype and awareness around this by-election, and we hope when we finalize the count, would have recorded an improved participation for these by-elections. Today, it's still a working day. We're hoping that after hours, those who come from work and those who come from their business of the day will also see the last afternoon rush before the 9 o'clock cut-off time.
What challenges as a commission have you faced in terms of the by-elections? Yesterday we heard of reports in the JB Marks municipality in the northwest. We also heard of some reports in the Eastern Cape where certain voters had challenges with going to voting stations because of weather conditions. And just today, earlier on, we heard of incidences, more specifically in Naledi in Soweto, where certain voters were prohibited from voting because of service delivery protests, because some community members were actually barring people from voting. Not so long ago, the EFF issued a statement condemning the ANC, saying that some members of the ANC were the ones who are actually blocking or barricading people from actually going into voting stations. What say you about this matter?
I think in a democratic country, there should not be a need for people to resort to violent measures or undemocratic means to make their point. We all support the right to protest peacefully, as long as that right does not infringe the right of other citizens who are inclined to participate, to access voting stations and to vote. As it relates to inclement weather, it was true yesterday we had instances of inclement weather in KZN, in Gauteng, but even in those circumstances, we are able to make readjustment and make sure that we reach those persons for whom we had approved special votes. The case of Naledi, it's true we had an incident where some community members barred our staff from operating at a voting station in Ward 113 Johannesburg. We have since re-established our operation by relocating the station from a church, and we have established a tent on an open field.
Mm-hmm. In terms of such incidences, I mean, on Monday, you had said that you're working closely with the police. Have we seen increased police visibility around these people to also ensure the safety not only of the voters, but of IEC officials as well?
You don't want to create an election should be about democratic expression.
But
So
Mr.
you do not
Sheburi,
want to create...
With all respect, I mean, you have people who are stopping people from voting. People are saying, I want to vote. It's their democratic right to actually vote. And yet another person is prohibiting them. Should you not deploy police to ensure their safety?
Police respond in those instances, and where there is cause to arrest that person, police would ordinarily act in the normal course of event. Yes, there are cases that have been laid with the SABs, and we will follow up with SABs to hear how those matters go. But to underscore this point, in a democracy, you do not need police for people to participate, because it's an expression of democratic choice. It should be done even outside the glare of police. But in those instances where we are forced to, we will work closely with the police to ensure that the right to protest does not impede the right of other people to participate in affairs of their communities.
So also on Monday, you've indicated that the IEC has spent 3 million so far in terms of personal protective equipment. Was this equipment distributed to voting stations in time? And just the process of that in terms of logistics, did everything run smoothly?
We are pleased that the logistics undertaken, as in previous election, has held up very well. Yesterday, we did not receive any complaints of shortages of PPEs. We had multiple teams in multiple wards across the country servicing the 23,000 persons who have applied for special votes. Again today, we implementing PPEs at the voting station for our staff. We are sufficiently satisfied that aspect of our logistics operation has held up very well.
I know it's too early to say, it's too early to preempt because our voting stations will be closing at 9 p.m. But I mean, I guess this was a huge test for the IEC in terms of that these elections will then provide a template as to going, in the future. There's certain by-elections that are going to take place in December and the local government elections next year. This by-election will set a template of how elections will be carried on so far. What lessons has the Commission learned thus far?
We will certainly draw serious lessons from the conduct of this by-election in case we're going to have the general election of municipal councils under COVID conditions. We will review how successful we were with our PPE strategy. We will review how safe the environment was for voters, and also see what it is that we could do in a communication field to further reassure citizens that by-election events will not be super spreader events for the virus.
Okay. And just talk us through logistics. So after 9 p.m., after those voting stations close, what happens thereafter? Talk us through that process.
We close the stations at 9 o'clock. If there are no people in the queue at that time, the presiding officer will close the voting station. They will secure the facility. If it's a school, they will close the gate. We will give staff a breather for a few minutes. From then onward, we then transform that station from a voting station into a counting station. The significance of that is that no ballot should be transported before it is counted and accounted for. So we convert that voting station into a counting station. Again, we will observe social distancing. Political party agents are permitted to observe the count, and we will have requisite PPEs to enable the count to take place in conditions of safety. We will count ballots for each of the political parties and issue a result which the party agents may sign. During the count, we will account for all ballot papers that we've received, the ballot papers that we have issued, and once there's a reconciliation, we complete a result statement that is signed by parties, and we leave a copy at the door of the station, and the other result slip is rolled back to our local office where it will be scanned to create an image, and thereafter it will be captured into our results system. Once the results are verified, we will issue the result sometime in the course of the day tomorrow.
Okay. So have there been any requests perhaps for voting stations to be opened beyond 9 o'clock? So maybe if Umama Wasi's Lalin is having difficulty with going to a voting station, she probably could make it to the voting station after 9 p.m. Will you probably in that case allow some time for Umama to actually vote?
We have not received any specific request for closure beyond 9 o'clock. To the contrary, we've received requests for early closure of voting station, and the Commission has authorized different voting times in 3 stations in the Eastern Cape. Those are rural type areas, and we are told that there's no activity beyond 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So in that case, the Commission has authorized that the station will close at 1900 hours. People who are in the queue at 2100 hours will be assisted until they've all voted. So if you are in the queue at 9 o'clock, we won't chase you away, we will assist you. But those persons who arrive at the station beyond 9 o'clock, after we have closed station, unfortunately they will not be permitted to participate. And also, a request made after 9 o'clock for a late close of station will not be accommodated.
Okay, so can you just please confirm to us as the SABC and to our viewers, a press conference will be held tomorrow by the IEC at 12 o'clock where the results will be announced?
We will give the analysis of the results tomorrow at 12. That's correct.
Okay. And I can't leave you without asking this question about Action SA. On Monday, you had said that you would, be reviewing the objection because the IEC has rejected their plea to be registered as a political party. Yesterday, news came in that you've rejected that appeal once again. Action SA has said that they're consulting with their legal team and they'll be taking this matter forward. The spokesperson, when speaking to our colleague Blaine Herman, had said that they feel as if the IEC is stalling this process. They need to be registered next year as a political party because they are very keen in contesting the local government elections next year.
The position of the Commission is that we do not engage with political parties or aspirant political parties via the media. Indeed, I can confirm that on Tuesday, the Commission dispatched to Action SA its considered view on its appeal. Yesterday, the party placed that communication in the public domain. On the part of the Commission is satisfied that it has responded formally to a political party on the appeal that it had made against the decision of the CEO. If the party remains aggrieved, they can approach the Electoral Court, or they may amend their logo and submit a new application that could be considered as a fresh application.
Okay. Mr. Sheburi, thank you so much for your time. So we will be back here tomorrow at Centurion at 12 o'clock for the outcomes and the results of the by-elections, our historic by-elections. With that said, Flo, that was the Deputy CEO of the Electoral Commission, Mr. Sheburi, just taking us through a number of things, the processes today. He says that everything has run smoothly, and in certain incidences where, there were certain disruptions, the IEC had to intervene, but everything is going according to plan. And just a reminder to those who still haven't voted, you've got less than 4 hours or so till 9 o'clock this evening. That, of course, voting stations will be closed by 9 p.m. Throughout all 9 provinces and 95 wards in 55 municipalities. And tomorrow, Flo, we will be back here again just to get the results and the outcomes of those by-elections at 12 p.m. So I implore you to stay tuned to SABC for all the latest. With that said, from me, Natasha Piri and Stella Fanula, it's back to you in studio.
All right, Natasha. Well, there's no other channel I'd be watching anyway now, would I? All right, thank you for that conversation that you've just had with the IEC's Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Masego Sheburi. That's Natasha Piri for us there at the IEC, talking all things by elections, but also we must remember that it is, we're slowly nearing election year next year. So also, I suppose all of this also in anticipation and preparation for election year next year. We heard Mr. Sheburi talking about the fact that he's happy about the COVID measures that have been put in place at the different stations, which was very important given the year that we've dealt with COVID-19, and saying that the voting stations are adequately prepared to then become counting stations as we know, and that a reminder that of course that no ballots will move venue. All right, Karen.